The Mendon-Honeoye Falls-Lima Sentinel welcomes you to this edition of the Mayors and Supervisors Weekly Update, brought to you by...
Each week, our community makes history. Each week, you make history. And each week, there's only one source to turn to for the first take on history. You know what that is? Subscribe to the Sentinel right now to discover the history being made in your own backyard.
The Mendon-Honeoye Falls-Lima Sentinel. More than just your news, it's your history.
Hey, welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Mayors and Supervisors Update. I'm Chris Carosa, publisher of the Mendon-Honeoye Falls-Lima Sentinel. Each week, we give you the goings-on from the mayors and supervisors in the towns and villages that we cover. This week, we're going to be starting with Jerry in Rush. Jerry, how are we doing in Rush?
Rush is doing just fine, Chris, and the weather has been beautiful, which it always is in Rush, but I think it's spread out beyond Rush for the past few days, which is a good thing. Our town is being faced with two very divisive issues. One is the proposed development on the former Foster Brooks property. That's on Route 15A on the north edge of town, bordering Henrietta. A developer wants to put many homes in there, and a lot of people are protesting and saying no because it'll involve sewers. And once people are very concerned that once sewers become available, they have a tendency to find their way to other parts of town. And we have a lot of people who are opposed to that. The developer at last week's meeting said that he has proof of most people wanting it. So that'll yet to be determined. And it is making life difficult for me and the other board members because, the buck stops with us. And how do we know? We know who we represent. How do we know we're making the right representation? The other issue is water. You've heard me talk about water before, and that is we've got many residents in town who have, I will say, putrid water. And I do mean putrid water. It is terrible. They can't drink it. They can't wash with it. It ruins their appliances. And we are forging ahead, hoping that that we can provide some relief to some of these people. But here again, the issue becomes one of, you've got a person in this house who says, I really need water bad, treated water. And you've got a person right next door who says, I don't want it, don't need it, don't come down my road with it because my well is just fine. And, that's probably true because aquifers are not predictable as to what they produce. And you can have 200 feet and it changes completely. So that's a very contentious issue also. But enough for the debate stuff going on. We had a LWRP that stands for Local Waterfront Revitalization Project in Henrietta last night. And that's a joint project between Henrietta and Rush to provide hiking trails and other amenities along the Genesee River from the canal down to near the south border of Rush. And I was very excited last night. We have our Deputy Supervisor, Amber Corbin, on that project. And they made the presentation last night, and it was just very exciting for me. And I hope that I get to see some of it develop in my lifetime, at least. Probably you won't as a supervisor, but I'm excited for it, whether I'm supervisor or not. It's just going to be a very wonderful asset to the people of Rush and surrounding area. I know that most, if not all, towns have received ARPA funds. And I'm wondering now, because I've had several emails indicating that other towns are appropriating a percentage of their ARPA funds to give to nonprofits, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, where the heck are they getting this money? Because I know several towns have gotten millions and millions of dollars. We haven't gotten millions and millions of dollars, and we have needs for it right now. And if I were to give any away, I'd say the rest of the board would run me off with a stick. So I was hoping that John and Rick would be on here so that I could ask them about it, but they're not here, so I'll have to go on without them and say that we're not going to share at this point. The last thing I want to mention is the Horseshoe Solar Project over there along the river on the other side of the river from Caledonia. That's very, very frustrating and troublesome to me because they just rejected our request to allow our rejection of their proposal. And we had not only the two entities involved, which is the town of Rush and the Rush United group, and we also had a private citizen who made a request to the siting board, and all was rejected. And in my mind, it is nothing more than a rejection of home rule authority. And, you know, home rule is the power of a local city or county to set up its own system of self-government without receiving a charter from the state. And, you know, there's more that I could say, but it's very, very frustrating to see home rule overridden by a private entity and supported by state government in the process of doing that. And in other words, they're, you know, in very basic terms, they're saying, we're going to tell you what you can do in your town, not you. And that is very offensive to me. And I don't know where that's going to go, but I hope none of the rest of the towns are ever confronted with that, because it's pretty frustrating. So that's a down note. So I'll mention the weather is still beautiful here in Rush, and nothing that Horseshoe or the state does at this point can change that. And I'll leave you with those thoughts on how beautiful it is in Rush.
Well, just for clarification, Jerry, when you say they rejected it, are you referring to a state agency or the developer or both?
I'm referring to the siting board, the ORA's siting board, the Office of Renewable Energy.
And is that a part of the state? Is that a state board?
It is. It's made up of judges and people from the State Energy Authority, and it's just they continue. Governor Cuomo had this plan that I think was partly, in part, promoted by his desire to seek a higher office in the future. And we all know what happened to Governor Cuomo, but some of us had the foolish thought that maybe when Governor Hochul took over, she would soften the aggressiveness of that project, but she hasn't. She's just promoted it and continues to usurp home rule authority on the town's part and continue to forge ahead with just saying, we're going to put in all this material in your town, and we don't care what you think about it. It's very frustrating.
You can't go to somebody in the Assembly or the Senate to help on this?
We have reached out to everyone, local assembly, local Senate. We're going to a party tomorrow with Joe Morelli, and I plan to nibble on his ear about this. I don't know if a congressman can do anything about it, but he's certainly going to know what I feel about the dissolving, and that's what it really is, dissolving of home rule authority when it comes to a large industrial solar complex.
Mm-hmm. This is certainly an issue that affects a lot of municipalities in our region. It was a subject of our town hall meeting in March, specifically home rule and what you're talking about, Jerry. So you're not alone in this issue. I just feel sorry for you and everybody in Rush who's kind of a victim of this. So
one of the things that really frustrates me is 2 years ago when we had one of the managers from Invenergy. Invenergy is the corporation that is seeking permitting for the Horseshoe project. I asked that manager in a public forum, why couldn't they just move a quarter-mile away and put this project, this Horseshoe project, on state-owned property? It would not impact one single house. It would not impact anything. And the response that I got from her right in a public meeting was, oh, we don't want to do that. The state is too difficult to deal with when it comes to a permitting process. And I came close to saying some expletive deletives, but thank goodness I didn't. But that was her answer, and we continue to voice that, and it just falls on deaf ears.
Yeah. All right. Well, you're making a challenge for me on how I'm going to make this a transcript for the paper. So I think everything you said is really important, and I'm going to try to figure out a way to include it, which doesn't make it sound like I'm interviewing you. So, all right. Thank you, Jerry. Mike, tell us some good news from Lima.
Okay, well, we can start with some good news, although I will tell you that the Article 10 Siting Board under Governor Cuomo eliminated the local people. It used to have 2 local representatives had to be part of each project decision, and they're eliminated in favor of all of Albany sort of folks that were appointed. We lost our voices then, and then this is the kind of thing that happens. However, in the town of Lima, we are going to have the 4th of July. And at the 4th of July celebration at Mark Tubbs Park, we are going to be having food and games and things. Plan to arrive maybe about 6. You'll see the VFW there with hot dogs and soft drinks and whatnot. Bring your lawn chairs and get set up. And then about 9:30 at night will be the giant fireworks display, which is jointly paid for by the village and the town of Lima. This is the supersized display that was done last year, so it should be a fantastic evening to watch the fireworks and enjoy some freedom. However, the other things that I've got to report on today, many of you know that I have a seat on the GLOW Solid Waste Committee, for Genesee, Livingston, and Wyoming counties. And we monitor the trash stream and the haulers and all of the stuff that goes with that. And we also monitor New York State to see if there's going to end up being a landfill or something else coming our way. With the meeting that I was just at, again, the paint care thing has come to be. So your paint now costs more at the store. That fee that's on every ounce of paint is going into paint recycling. So far, your safe bet is to find your local Sherwin-Williams store, and they will take your paint, not every kind of paint, but most kinds. What people are reporting is that the recycling boxes at the Sherwin-Williams stores are packed. So you may want to call ahead before you do that. We have primary voting coming up this week. And so I would like to give you some reasons to vote, because sometimes folks who are making legislation do not really consider the unintended consequences of what may seem like a terribly good idea at 2 in the morning in Albany. So unbelievably, the law regarding electronics recycling was changed in this last session. Now, electronics recycling must be at no charge by the vendor. So absorb that for a second. No charge by the vendor. When the town of Lima hosted electronics recycling for the last 2 years as part of our spring cleanup, we would pay the vendor for the semi-trailer, the driver, the assistant driver, and then the 2 of them would stay and help package up the recycling properly, all the keyboards here and all the TVs done a certain way and all that other stuff. And then we receive a bill for the amount of personnel time and for the trucking to haul this stuff away. The companies are, as of January 1st, will not be allowed to charge for any of those things, thus rendering the electronics recycling programs a thing of the past. There's no way that they're going to be able to subsidize, 16 man hours and all that fuel and everything else. In shock. So we at the town of Lima, of course, would like to continue doing the electronics recycling, and everything is sort of speculative at this point, but it appears that we would be staffing the collection on our own, which is what we had intended to do this year, and probably having to truck it ourselves too, over to whichever vendor it is that we're going to be using. This past time it was eWaste Plus over in Victor. It's a really, I wish they had thought it through. Please contact your legislators at the state level to let them know that maybe they should not have changed that. Also, it is now legal in New York State to compost your own body. That is right. You may now compost yourself as opposed to casket burial or cremation. There were certain cemeteries that were doing composting. I know of one in Ithaca. I think there may have been one here in the Rochester area too, where they would simply bury you without a vault, without a casket, and they had to get special permission. Now, all across New York State, it is legal to do that. So one step closer to Soylent Green. And with that,
Oh, gee whiz.
have a great
Wow, you guys, man. I'm afraid to ask if there's anything more you want to add because I'm already depressed. So
I can't stop laughing.
all right. Well, thank you everyone for watching, and We had a lot of good stuff today. I mean, I have to admit, this was a pretty intense conversation. So again, we're here every Sunday at 1 o'clock on our Facebook page. If you like the page, you'll be notified when this airs. On YouTube, you subscribe to our YouTube channel and you'll be notified when that's aired. Otherwise, you can read all about it in the paper next week. All right, that's it for today, this week. Thank you, and bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Imagine yourself communicating with a difference. Pan-Dimensional Solutions helps you do this. Whether live spectator events, taped broadcasts, or real-time audience-engaging programs, you can benefit immediately from the tools Pan-Dimensional Solutions will share with you. Do you want to make a difference? Contact us at pandimensional.com.